traveling. Good morning. Welcome back to the Joint Standing Committee on Education and Cultural Affairs. We have a morning full of work sessions to jump into, and I do not, alas, have a poem for this blustery Monday, our Ides of March. But we'll jump in with introductions. First off, I am State Senator Maddie Daughtry. I represent the communities of Brunswick, Harpswell, Freeport, North Yarmouth, and Pownell. Although looking out my window, it's so windy, it looks like we're kind of in the Wizard of Oz. With that, I will introduce my House Chair, Representative Brennan. And Representative Brennan, you are on mute.
I think we got to start a fine system of like 50 cents every time you.
Right, get a fine. Yeah. I'm Representative Michael Brennan, and I represent District 36, which is part of Portland.
Senator Woodson.
Senator Dave Woodson, District 33, which covers Sanford to Parsonsfield along the New Hampshire border.
Representative Crockett.
Good morning, everyone. Ed Crockett, District 43, which is part of Portland and part of Falmouth.
And Representative Dodge.
Good morning, Jan Dodge, House District 97, Belfast, Northport, and Waldo.
Representative Lyman.
Good morning, Sheila Lyman. I'm at the Capitol. I represent District 74, J, Livermore Falls, and part of Livermore. Thank you.
Representative McCray.
Yes, good morning. I'm Dave McCray, representing District 148 up in Aroostook County. And I'm struck by the fact that things are changing by every 10 minutes. Sun, no sun. Warm day, cold day, 2 below this morning, 45 the other day. So spring must be coming. Thank you.
That's for darn sure. Someone down here saw their first robin. I got an email about that. So spring is definitely on its way. Representative Millette.
Good morning, Rebecca Millette, representing House District 30, which is most of Cape Elizabeth, if there's anything left of it after this wind.
Oh, Representative Roach.
Good morning from the Nordic village of Wells, District 7 this morning. I'd also like to say happy birthday to the state of Maine. Today's the birthday of Maine, so happy birthday.
All right, good, thank you.
I was going to read us one of the declaration pieces that I don't know if everyone got from I think it was the Maine Historical Society through the bicentennial. Should have sent you all that. But if you didn't receive your bicentennial book from everyone, let us know so you can get a copy, because it's fascinating reading about some of the initial things that were going on this day in 1820. So thanks for the reminder and happy birthday, Maine. And with that, Representative Salisbury.
Hi, I'm Sue Salisbury, and I represent House District 35, which is part of Westbrook.
And Representative Sampson.
Good morning, live from the state capitol on this blustery Wednesday. Windy day. You should have read Winnie the Pooh. He has a thing on Wednesday. Anyway, I'm Heidi Sampson, representing the good people of House District 21. That's Alfred, Limerick, Shapley, Newfield, and Parsonsfield.
And Representative Stearns.
Good morning. My name is Paul Stearns. I represent House District 119, which consists of 12 towns and the unorganized territories of Piscataquis County. And happy birthday to the finest state in the Union.
Hear, hear. Well said. So we're here this morning to be going over work sessions on various bills. I am just pulling up my notes. We will be going in a slightly different order than what is on our schedule. Well, actually not. So we'll be going LD 440, followed by LD 277, followed by LD 380, followed by LD 430. So if you're looking on the electronic version of our schedule on the webpage, it doesn't match up, but if you're following off of our wonderful weekly schedule published by our analyst and our committee clerk, that's the order that they are there. Any questions before we jump into work sessions? Seeing none, it seems like everyone's got their notes all in the same place. I will get the first work session rolling and kick things off by opening the work session on LD 440, an act to conserve the Francis Perkins Homestead National Historic Landmark. And Mr. Seneff, if you're ready to take it away.
Good morning, everybody. So first, please do let me know if I'm not talking loud enough. That is my biggest challenge, both in person and over Zoom. So please do let me know. So this is LD 440. This is an act. Oops, I'm gonna share my screen actually, if that's okay. Okay. Now, this is LD 440, an act to conserve the Francis Perkins Homestead National Historic Landmark. Everybody should have received the materials for this, as well as all of the other bills. The committee is working today over email and also posted online. So this bill is pretty straightforward. It provides a one-time funding in the amount of $100,000 to the Francis Perkins Center to ensure that the public has safe and accessible access to the Francis Perkins homestead. The committee heard a fair amount of testimony in favor of this bill. And the testimony walked through the background of what is going on with the funding and the background of the homestead and what it does. Sorry, I see that Representative Millett had a hand up.
Representative Millett?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to let you know that I clicked on the link that you had sent us to get us to these documents, and it was saying the page is not working. I'm wondering if anybody else is having that problem.
I checked this morning, and it looks like a couple of the link pathways off of the materials page aren't posted yet, but should be today. So I did check in with my office this morning. That should be all LDs should be linked as of the end of the day today.
Okay.
So I did send it out over email when I realized that might be the case.
Yeah, there should be an email with attachments that came through, I think, yesterday, correct, Sam?
Yes, yesterday I sent emails for each of them. There was only one information request by the committee, and that was to get the center's schedule and times open to the public. I did go to the webpage, and there's opportunity for tours to be scheduled. I believe that there will be folks here from the center to provide more information on a set schedule of how the public can currently access the amenities at the center. I provided some links to the website, links to a grant award announcement. The preliminary fiscal is here. Again, it's a straight $100,000. I also just did want to mention, so this is part of these funds. These funds are to help with matching funds. The center did receive a significant federal grant for this work, and so this would help with those matching funds. The center also has received and is receiving a pretty significant amount of private infusion of funds into this project as well. And I believe there are folks here from the center. In terms of any legal problems or anything like that, nothing identified in this bill. This is again a pretty straightforward bill. So I will unshare now so folks can see each other, if that's okay, Senator.
Absolutely, thank you. I have a question to start off with from Senator Woodson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A couple of questions. So this is a one-time funding of $100,000. Has the state given money to this organization or to the House in the past?
I didn't see any record of that. There may be somebody from the center who can verify that.
And the second question I have, is this being used as a private residence at all? In other words, are folks living there as a part of this agreement? Is it a residence or is it strictly a museum or historical site that's open certain times of the year?
I am not sure if there's anybody living on site permanently.
So Senator Woodson, I just let the president of the Francis Perkins Center, Michael, in here, and he might be better able to answer your questions. So I don't know, Mr. Channing, if you would like to introduce yourself, and perhaps, I don't know if we need to repeat the question, but if you could help shed some light on Senator Woodson's inquiry.
Well, I thank you. I heard the last half of it, but I can just speak to the progression on this property. The Frances Perkins homestead was owned by her grandson up until January 3rd of last year. Thanks to his graciousness, we've been able to do summer programming at the homestead, including tours, senior college classes had a session there, both from Brunswick and from Portland, and other events. But up until January of last year, it remained a private residence. Now that we have purchased the property, we have begun our process of the renovation and protection of the building, the connected L and the barn from the elements, and to bring the repairs up to current standards. With the Save America's Treasures grant that we received, we're in the midst now of finishing architectural designs, getting local permits, and we are hopeful that in the summer, the work by contractors will begin. Our aim is to have this facility open to the public in early 2022.
And my first question, sir, was, has the state contributed in the past to this restoration or to the purchase?
No, it has not.
It has not. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Do you have any further questions from the committee for Mr. Cheney? Representative Sampson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Cheney. Would you be able to speak to the federal funding that has been received over the last several years for this facility, please?
Yes, we were able to receive the Save America's Treasures grant from the National Park Service in September of last year. And that is a grant line that is specifically designated for National Historic Landmarks. The Perkins Homestead received that designation from the National Park Service in 2014. This grant in September of 2020 is the first federal funding we have received.
Any other questions? Seeing none, just want to thank you for being here and being able to shed a little bit of light on the history of the center. So I'm going to pop you back into the waiting. Oh, wait, Representative Millette has a question for you. Oh, no. Okay. Popping you back into the waiting room, the joys of Zoom committee.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Representative Millette?
Yeah, so I think that the folks that have been working on this historic landmark have done an exceptional job of finding many sources of revenue to do right by it. And I think that the state of Maine contributing $100,000 seems very reasonable, considering what it will bring to not just our students in Maine, both elementary, secondary, and post-secondary, but also our tourism. So I plan to support this. And Madam Chair, are you ready for a motion?
I think so at this time.
I move ought to pass.
I would second that, please, Madam Chair.
So we have a motion of ought to pass and a second by Representative Dodge. Do you have any conversation on the motion? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All those in favor of the motion on the floor, please raise your hand and wait for me to call off your name and keep it high. So all those in favor, we have Representative Dodge, Senator Daughtry, Representative Millette, Representative Brennan, Representative McCray, Representative Salisbury, and Representative Crockett. All those opposed? We have Senator Woodsum, Representative Roach, Representative Stern, Representative Lyman, and Representative Sampson. And what would your report be?
Ought not to pass.
Ought not to pass.
Ought not to pass. I'm seeing nodding in agreement, so everyone would be on the ought not to pass report. And let's say, I think that's it. I just want to thank the bill sponsor, Senator Maxman, for bringing the bill forward and for being with us this morning. And with that, I will close the work session on LD 440. And up next, I will open the work session on LD 277 and act to discontinue the use of the SAT in Maine schools from our own Representative Brennan.
Can I go ahead and share the screen again?
Perfect. Yes, Representative Brennan, were you trying to say something?
No, I'm fine.
Okay. Well, let's jump into the bill analysis and overview. So ready whenever you are, Mr. Senna.
This is LD 277, an act to discontinue the use of the SAT in Maine schools. So just as a note, I did double check if SAT was the correct correct designation, and it is. It's changed its name 5 times, and it is now just the SAT. It doesn't stand for anything. So that is correct. So this bill prohibits the Commissioner of Education from including the use of the SAT as a method for assessing student performance in the state assessment program. It also directs the Department of Education to develop an alternate method of assessment to replace the SAT. So the committee heard testimony both for, against, and neither for nor against this bill. There was a fair amount of testimony submitted and also a fair amount of questions asked. So it was asked, just to clarify, it had been noted by DOE during testimony that the contract for the administration of the SAT had been discontinued in October, but it was asked if schools had actually completely discontinued use of the SAT for assessment purposes. DOE did send a response, which I included in the materials, but in that response, they did verify that indeed the SAT has been discontinued for implementation as the state summative assessment. The state will no longer be paying the costs for the administration of the SAT, although independent SAUs will have the option to contract with the College Board to provide the SAT for its students, but that would be at the option of the district. It was also asked if DOE has already identified an alternative method of assessment. So they're in that process right now of identifying an alternative method. So they've looked at the NUIA, for example, which is used for obviously for other grades, but they have not completed that, though that it looks like they will be contracting for the NUIA. They can provide more information on that. They are here today. So an interesting question was asked if it is discontinued, if the SAT is discontinued, what would the impact be on kids who are applying to colleges? Committee members wanted to know what colleges are doing right now. Are colleges requiring the SAT? Are they requiring the ACT? So I went and went down a little bit of a rabbit hole here, and I did include a spreadsheet that summarizes what I found. So I looked at New England, I kept it to New England colleges and universities, mostly four-year schools. I did look at the community colleges. I did not include that on my spreadsheet, but I did look at them. They are test optional Maine community colleges right now, at least temporarily. Of the 48 schools that I looked at, all of them, with the sole exception of the Coast Guard Academy, have either a permanent or a temporary test optional, or less commonly test free policy. So a test optional policy means that a student who has taken the SAT or the ACT may submit that score for consideration. However, submission is not required. Many of these schools did this, 23 of them, in response to the COVID pandemic and concern that students would not be able to safely take the SAT. So of those schools, some of them specifically said, this is a pilot program. We may continue this. We may never reinstitute use of the SAT. Others were clear that this is going to be a temporary thing. And then there's schools that haven't used the SAT for admissions purposes for some time and have no plans to do so. And then there's a few schools, this is less common, that have completely test-free policies. So they don't accept scores even if a student has scores available. So it was also asked, so, okay, in these test optional schools, does that disadvantage the kids who choose not to submit or cannot submit a score? So a lot of schools on their websites do address this concern, and the language that is commonly used is that students not submitting scores will not be disadvantaged. That seems to be the term that is typically used. There's not data that I could find that differentiated students who did and did not submit scores and how that impacted their admissions. Some schools did say on their websites that if a student had what they considered to be a strong score and thought that it would benefit them, that they should submit it. So that would imply that there is some, for students who do well on the SAT, it can help. So it's kind of a gray area to me in terms of how that actually impacts admissions. It's a little hard to suss out. Information was also requested about subject matter SAT tests. I did include that on that chart. Most schools, I mean, if schools aren't requiring the SAT, they're not requiring the subject matter tests. And it seems like few schools are requiring them, though they will again consider them if they are submitted. So I found a fair amount of additional information. So just as background, Maine began using the SAT as an accountability assessment for high school juniors in 2006. So it's been 15 years. This is the current statute. I always try to include a link to that, or if it's short, copy it out and put it in the bill analysis so you have it in front of you. The MEA submitted a link to an article in Educational Evaluation and Policy Analysis, which found that Maine's adoption of the SAT as a means of assessment was estimated to increase overall college attendance by Maine students by 2 to 3 percentage points. I linked to that article if you would like to read it. There's another article from Educate Maine called the Maine School Testing Debate, which looks at the issue of testing more broadly. The Education Commission of the states had they published these response to information requests. They had a couple of really relevant ones that I linked to and included some of the summary data here. So there's a real mix in terms of states that are using SAT or ACT for federal testing accountability. Still in the minority, but a significant number do. And some of them offer it in addition to other assessment tests, not as the sole test. They looked at what schools require students to take the SAT or the ACT. Again, not the majority, but a significant number do require the ACT or the SAT. Also, this I thought was interesting. The states that offer it free of charge. So this was in 2018, so it's slightly out of date, but there are a number of states, and this corresponds pretty well with the states that use it for assessment offer it free of charge. There's this might be useful for other bills too, but there's a 50-state review of school assessments that the Education Commission of the states has published. There's a link here. It provides a profile of testing that is used for each of the 50 states, and a good resource to have. And finally, Florida did an interesting, very long review on use of the ACT and the SAT for assessment purposes. They found that it didn't correspond well with other assessment tests, so it was kind of apples and oranges comparison-wise. So their concern was that if some districts used it and others didn't, you couldn't compare the assessment results from a district that used it with a district that didn't. So is a very detailed report, and there is a link here. I didn't find any issues as written with the bill in terms of its construction or its legality, and there's not a fiscal impact yet for this bill. So I will stop share so you can see each other, and that is what I have for you on that bill.
Thank you very much. Do you have any questions from the committee? I see everyone's jumping to take the SAT. Senator Woodson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I'm concerned that the State Department of Education is going along with this, promoting this, when they don't have a set method, maybe they do, of testing or assessing kids in Maine. And another question I have is, it seems to be a lot of gray areas in what the college is going to do. I mean, some are saying, oh, it's temporary. No, this will be what we're going to do. And the third question I have is, what is the cost of taking the SAT at this most recently? Does anyone know?
I'm sure I can find out quickly, Senator. I will say I think the department is well on its way to implementation of the NUIA. They are here, and I think they can give some additional information. So I may have understated that, but that they can provide more information on that. But the NUIA is the plan, as from what I understand.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And Representative Roach.
Yeah, probably not question as much as I too. What's that? I'm sorry.
We're in work session, so you can have as many statements as you'd like.
Thank you. I agree with Senator Woodson. My struggle in this whole thing has been, and I've talked to local and people that we love to do this in education, and especially from the government standpoint, is we start something, get it going, finally get it going fairly well in most districts, and then we pull the rug out from under them and say, let's try something else, and really not have a great plan. I will tell you, and people can deny this, when you have things like the NWEA or the MEA or whatever you want to have, kids just tend not to take it very seriously. The one thing they've done is take the SAT for the most part fairly seriously. It took some time, but we finally got it. And now we're gonna pull the rug out from underneath it. And I shake my head every time I hear colleges are not looking at the SAT and not accepting. I deal with kids on a daily basis. Yes, they are. Though some that aren't are doing it based on good intentions, and then some that aren't are doing it based on, I need to fill the seats, and I need to get the tuition dollars in, and I need to do this. And I just think without a solid plan, we should stick with this. I really struggle with the piece of this not having a solid plan ahead of us, and we pull out the rug on this. I am strongly, I don't like I'm not a fan of the SAT. I'm not sitting here telling you I love it, but it's what we have, and what we have that's shown some success in testing. It's not filling in ovals and making designs with ovals like they did with the MEA and some of those that we all know happened in every high school in America, and on Maine, excuse me. It gives them a chance to prove themselves. And some kids, we've had many kids at Wells who don't do well academically, and all of a sudden the SAT score is very high, and they all of a sudden say, okay, maybe I can go to a college. And I'll tell you the opposite happens too. Where a kid is a strong academic kid, but just doesn't test well and doesn't do well on the SAT. But I really struggle with this piece. We're pulling a test out after all these years, 15 years of really busting butt in education. I love superintendents that slow play all these mandates that come down from the state. That's the greatest thing in the world, because they know it's going to change in 4 or 5 years, but that shouldn't be the way it is in education.
Thank you, Representative Roach. And then we have Representative Sampson. I just want to add for the committee, we do have Jeanette Kirk from the DOE in the waiting room. So if anyone does have questions from the DOE, we can definitely bring her in. So just let me know. And with that, Representative Sampson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That was well played because I do have a question for the DOE.
Let me let Ms. Kirk in 1 second. Going through the Zoom rabbit hole. Ms. Kirk gets settled. And Ms. Kirk, if you wouldn't mind, we have a couple of questions for the DOE, and I think Representative Sampson had the first one.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I know we had this discussion last session, and I was a proponent of the idea of replacing the SAT with the ACT. My question for you, Ms. Kirk, is if the department is considering the NWEA, what are the pros and cons that you all are considering between that and say the ACT? And could you lay that out for us?
Absolutely. So good morning, everybody. So with the NWEA assessment at the moment, as you know, we didn't have any summative assessments administered during 2020 as a result of the pandemic. So as we've entered 2021 in that school year, we've recognized that educators really do need that data at their fingertips to help inform classroom instruction for all of their students. One of the challenges with our summative assessments as they currently are is the delay in data that when we receive it. So transitioning to the NWEA under this emergency pandemic is ensuring that educators have this data at their fingertips so that it's more immediate and they can see the student performance in an actual sense and not months down the line. So that's part of the transition with the NWEA contract as currently is. I was listening to the conversation earlier too, and I heard the question about the cost. The cost is $68 per student. So I want to clarify that. As far as your question goes, Representative Sampson, with the ACT, it's still a summative assessment. So there still would be a delay in receiving those that level of data as far as the students' performance on that assessment.
Can I have a follow-up, Madam Chair? Was that okay? You were muted. Okay, thank you. I love this style of communication. Anyway, so the ACT is a summative assessment. The SAT is a summative assessment. I understand the NWEA is much more, that has a quicker turnaround. What was the actual purpose of doing the SAT as the end of the year assessments for students? Wasn't it for the purpose of summative assessment?
Yes, it was. It was a summative assessment that we utilized within Maine's accountability model. So that was filtered in as our academic performance indicator.
Correct. So if this is at the end of the year, towards the end of a student's high school career, why would we not want something that was summative as opposed to formative?
I think I would refer back to my previous response on trying to ensure we have data to make sure that all of our students are given the correct supports and the appropriate supports to make sure that they're able to graduate with their class at the end of this year. I think if we wait further to receive that data from the College Board as far as the SAT goes, there may be interventions that we may be delayed in implementing to support that student in this interim measure between March and the end of the school year.
Madam Chair, can I just have another follow-up? This is very interesting. So I'm a little bit confused because you would think that a student that is taking the SATs towards the end of their high school career, you would think that there would be a greater amount of, a higher number of indicators to show whether the student is going to be able to graduate. I never realized the SAT was ever used for that purpose. And why are we shifting? I guess I need clarification on that.
I don't think we are shifting. I think I'm confusing matters. So a student would take the SAT in their third year of high school. So then when the student is applying for college, that's when we've indicated here that student could potentially using those scores in order for their college applications. We've also heard that a majority of colleges have ceased obtaining those reports. As part of the response to the emergency pandemic that we're in, shifting to the NAWIA ensures that we are able to better have a handle on that data for that student, so we can see right now where that student is, and then also gauge those instructional supports from here on out to support that student further in their education. I'm sorry, Summer.
Madam Chair, I promise, can I ask just one more question, please?
One, and then we have to get back to Representative Roach.
So I understand with the whole issue with the pandemic and the need for a more formative assessment. I don't see the justification for it going long term though, do you? And can you explain that, please?
As far as long term goes, we do have a plan in place where we have 145 educators standing by to engage with the department on a complete redesign of assessment and accountability. So that is part of our longer term plan. Our NAWIA assessment at the moment, third year high school students are required to take the assessment, and second year high school students have the option of taking that assessment, so we can see that continuity and progression of their achievement, and then also ascertain growth for those students over the course of the next school year. So it is an interim measure, and then with the assistance of educators and the collaboration with educators, we are able then to redesign our entire assessment system to make sure that it is purposeful and meaningful to the state of Maine and is not simply addressing the accountability indicators that are in place.
Okay, I have Representative Roach followed by Senator Woodson.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. And thank you, Mrs. Kirk, for coming in today for this. Quick question, you said a majority of colleges, but the research that we have in front of us doesn't show that it's a majority of colleges not looking at this. It actually shows the opposite, I think, that they're still looking at it and they're still judging on SAT if that's what you care for. So I don't see that as true.
And I may have misheard this morning. I thought I had heard that a majority were not requiring it at the moment, that if it was available, it could be submitted, but it was not a requirement at this time. Okay. Given that a number of students, in last year's cohort for school year 2020 did not participate in the assessment. So those results would not have been available.
Right.
So I apologize if I misheard.
No, that's all right. But I just want to make sure I clarify, because if there was different information from each side, I just want to make sure I know. Two is on the NWEA. It would seem to me that that is a great test for 8th graders or maybe even 9th graders to see. By the time you're a junior taking the NWEA, and then we're going to switch your whole academic program based on results or whatever for your senior year, a lot of kids have listen, they've made some giant decisions in their academic, or they have requirements already in place that they have to meet, or whatever. It seems late to me, and that the SAT is where we would be looking for them. If you could reach a compromise in this, that we would look at it from that standpoint, because I'm telling you, most juniors, when they take that, are going to say, what's this going to go? Why am I doing this? Well, we're going to assess where you are so we can look at your program for your senior year. They're either looking at AP courses, they're looking at this and this, and then to change gears on them as a junior, it just doesn't make sense to me at all. I think this testing, I remember we had the NWAs, and a lot of the elementary and middle school teachers loved it. but by the time they got to high school, it kind of didn't really work for them. So I struggle with that piece, and I just think it's a better test is the SAT right now. Thank you. And I'll lower my hand.
Thank you, Representative Roach. I have Senator Woodson followed by Representative Stearns.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I feel a disadvantage here. I'm not familiar with the newer NWEA test, but what is the reception? How do the colleges receive that test? I mean, what is the assessment of the colleges with regard to the success of that test and the results of the test?
So the NWEA is not a college reportable assessment. It doesn't work in that way. The NWEA is an interim assessment which can be administered 3 times over the course of a school year. So students typically would participate in the NWEA in the fall, in the winter, and in the spring. Students are given, based on their performance, they're given a growth goal for that period of time. So it tracks the students' performance and growth during those instructional weeks. And then that data is then utilized by educators to inform their classroom practice to meet the needs of students within the classroom.
Okay, thank you.
I have Representative Stearns.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Boy, as we can see, there are pros and cons certainly in this matter. And it's evidenced all the way down through the various testimony that came in. I certainly respect the first notion of using the SAT as to lift all students, to lift aspirations, to remove the financial barrier for students to be able to take the SAT. But at the same time, from the very beginning, I've been concerned about first of all, whether or not the SAT measures achievement or whether it measures college readiness. And in my opinion, it's more of a college readiness tool. And my second beef from the beginning has been that to give every student the same test would assume that every student has the same academic program for 4 years in high school. If this was a good idea, I think that colleges would have a single exam for all of their students to determine whether or not they were successful in college. And I believe that you would find the engineering students and the philosophy students probably have a different idea about what their final exam should look like. So it is difficult. I hate to see the students who want to take the SAT or the ACT not be able to do so due to financial reasons. And yet at the same time, I really understand the department's urge to go back basically to an MEA type model where we're going to measure achievement levels in high school rather than a tool to move on to further studies. So at this point, I believe I would support the bill for those reasons, but it's a tough one.
Thank you, Representative Stearns. I have Representative Brennan followed by Representative Sampson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And if I can make it a little bit less difficult for you, Representative Stearns, I'd just like to ask Ms. Kirk, according to the response from the department, the SAT has already been discontinued. So just in response to Representative Roach's comments about pulling the rug out, the rug has already been pulled out. Is that correct?
The SAT has been discontinued in Maine as an assessment for accountability purposes, yes.
Yes.
So we will not be administering as a state summative assessment the SAT.
Correct. So and secondly, there's nothing in the bill that would prevent a local school district from continuing to administer the SAT for those students that want to apply to the University of Illinois or the University of Utah that might require the SAT. You don't have to respond to that. That's more of a comment from me. So I just want to clarify with Representative Roach that in fact, the shift away from the SAT has already occurred and that the department is in the process of developing an alternative assessment process. And so what the bill would basically do is saying going forward, the SAT could not be used for assessment purposes 5 years from now or 10 years from now if there was a shift in administration or different thinking. And it would still allow for the test to be administered by local districts, depending on student demand. But at this point, as you've pointed out, the SAT has been discontinued and will not be offered in the same way it has been in past years, but by the department.
Oh, you're on mute, Ms. Kerr.
I'm muted. It's got to be one time in a day, right, where you forget to unmute and start talking. You missed Pails of Wisdom, by the way, just within that short second. So yes, we are not administering the assessment as a summative assessment this year, but I do want to also emphasize that there are waivers available, fee waivers available for students who may find the $68 to be a challenge. And it does, within those fee waivers, it does provide additional college reportable scores at no cost, other assessments at no cost. So there is a package available as part of those fee waivers.
Thank you.
I have Representative Sampson, followed by Representative McCray, followed by Senator Woodson, followed by Representative Roach. And I'm going to write all of those down.
Very good, Madam Chair. Thank you. So Ms. Kirk, I guess my first question is, do you know what it costs for the ACT test?
I want to say it was around the region of $52.
Okay. So I wanted to explore the idea. I mean, we've been focusing so much on so many different forums about individualized learning and having things, you know, more tailored to the students. I have, you know, I've been on the record speaking against the SAT as being that one size fits all summative assessment. What I'd like to just throw this out and get some feedback from you on this thought, and even from my colleagues. If the department wants a summative assessment or some form of standardized test, let's just say that, at the end of the year, the junior year, why can't we offer an option where students are taking either the SAT or the ACT, and that the NUIA would be something totally different because you're not doing a summit that's not a summative assessment? What are your thoughts on that?
So the ESEA, so the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, is very clear in that it has to be a statewide measure of assessment. So if we implemented an ACT and an SAT, we would not have that consistent measure across all students. So as far as the accountability piece, those would not factor in. They could not be utilized in the same way. So that piece would not jive as an optional piece, if that makes sense.
That's helpful. Actually, I forgot about that. You're right. Thank you. I'm done. Thank
you, Representative Sampson. Up next, I have Representative McCray, followed by Senator Woodson, followed by Representative Roach.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Good morning, Ms. Kirk. The SAT has been used by colleges. I mean, I took it back in the 60s, so it's been around forever. I'm sure, of course, it's evolved and all that. And it was a college application kind of thing. Then it went on through years and years and years. I know I'm pontificating here, but and then all of a sudden it became the test that the state was administering to 11th graders. So my first question, and I will have a follow-up or two. My first question is why? What was the motivation for the state doing that?
So the motivation was we recognized that students at the time wanted to take the SAT. However, the weekend assessment was a barrier at times. So therefore, administering it on a school day was beneficial. And then additionally, the SAT changed its structure. So it wasn't originally designed for accountability purposes. It was designed, as you indicated, to be utilized for college applications. The College Board changed their structure and designed the SAT so it could be used for accountability purposes. So with that in mind, that's when the state had transitioned to utilize the SAT for both accountability purposes. That had never been previously permitted.
Okay, follow up, Madam Chair, please. And thank you. So I guess I'm gonna put two questions in the same one so I don't have to have another follow up. Why did the state discontinue it? And was that test initiated by the state wall to wall, all students, 11th grade? Was that under some federal push to have that accountability test? And why did the state discontinue that in favor of the NUIA?
We discontinued it as an emergency response to the pandemic. So we did not administer the assessment in 2020 due to the waivers that were provided by the US Department of Education. And then, as I mentioned before, in a response to that, the pandemic and making sure we can get actionable immediate data in the hands of educators, that's when we made the move and the shift to not administer the SAT this year. We wanted to make sure that educators have that data to support their instructional planning in the classroom. And that's when we made the shift to using the NUIA for our third year of high school. We also heard from our superintendents, and they've indicated that additionally offering the NUIA at the 10th grade level, so the second year of high school, would also be an advantage. So we've also included the second year of high school in our contract with NUIA. So we're able to offer that assessment to both second year high school students and third year high school students, with the goal of then next year, when we administer the assessment in 2022, we would be able to hopefully see that growth of students from that 10th grade to 11th grade, or second year to third year of high school.
Thank you very much. Good answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative McCray. Up next, I have Senator Whitson, followed by Representative Roach.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I understand the importance of using NUIA for assessment in the lower grades, but I don't quite understand why the state would decide to give up on accountability purposes or the readiness of a student to go to college and be successful. It seems like as a state, we should follow up on that and be looking or concerned about where our graduates are headed. I'm very confused on this whole thing. Can you help me out there? Why wouldn't the state Department of Education be concerned about students going on to higher education and their readiness and accountability?
So the main learning results have not changed. So our educators and our classroom practitioners are still implementing the main learning results, which we believe ensures a student would be ready to graduate college and career ready. The transition that we've made is from assessing that readiness, as it were. So as far as instruction and standards go, there's no transition regarding that. The only transition that's been made is how we assess that student performance.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if I agree with you, but thank you.
Thank you, Senator Whitson. I have Representative Roach, followed by Representative Lyman.
Thank you again. I'm glad I didn't speak without unmuting. I almost did. Thank you again. I guess I get just a couple of clarifying. When the NWA, I understood that we don't have the SAT anymore. We still offer it at our school, and we'll continue, I hope. But the NWA, is this going to be the test that's going to, like, I know everybody's jumping on what's the gap? What's the gap we created by COVID and all this stuff? Which to me, I just don't get that piece. Like everybody's got a gap. Like nobody in the country doesn't have a gap. You know, I mean, maybe some greater than others, but it's just what it is. There's going to be some piece to that. But is that what you're saying, or is the NWA now going to be the test for the long term? Is my first question, I guess.
The NWA is going to be our assessment for grades 3 through 8 and second and third year of high school for the 2021 administration in math and ELA and the 2022 administration. Beyond that, we're going to be working with our educators to redesign our assessment system with our accountability system, because the two are interrelated. So that's the long-term plan.
And is the main DOE saying that between now and June, we're going to do this at high schools?
Administer the NOER assessment?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Roach. I have Representative Lyman, followed by Representative Millette.
Is it me? Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm struggling with a couple of things. For me, as a teacher just out of the classroom, the new year was meant to be, immediate assessment of children in order to plan ongoing instruction. And I see the new year and the SAT and ACT is really kind of apples and oranges on the purpose of those tests. So that's the thing I'm struggling with right now. And then I guess I also understood the new year to be quite a costly test. How much is it for the new year to be administered?
The license for the NOER is $12.50 per student.
Thank you.
Your Representative Lyman, Representative Millette.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, so Representative Lyman, I totally get the confusion. And so I think it's important if we go back to what the bill and what it's where the statute lies. And the statute lies in assessment. And so when I was growing up, my learning was assessed by the MEAs. And then I chose to take the SAT because I wanted to apply to higher education institutions. So the SAT was kind of made an assessment of learning by the state of Maine for a very short period of time. And it's rather the MEAs that had been really the kind of the exams. The problem with the MEAs, as I understood it, is that it took a really long time for educators to get back the results to inform themselves and their colleagues about individual students and how they were doing. From what I had learned as a school board member and what I've heard on the education committee is that educators really like the NWEAs because of the timeliness and accuracy. So from what I'm understanding from the department is temporarily the NWEAs are going to be used because it's a standing program. It's a way to get teach educators information about how our kiddos are doing. But long term, there will be some sort of new form of Maine education assessments going forward. My hope is that those newly developed assessments will provide more timely information as well, or find a way to work with the NWEAs, because my concern is, and I think that Representative Sampson would agree, that our kids are being tested. We were running MEAs and NWEAs. Our kids spend a lot of time being tested. And so ideally, it would be really great if either the new education assessments being developed by the state or the NWAs served all purposes for assessment. So we don't have our kiddos taking assessment after assessment after assessment. So that would be my plea to the department. Please arrive on one assessment that will give educators timely information so they don't have to administer multiple assessments throughout the year. As for the SAT, I don't believe it is a very good assessment tool. But yet it does still remain a college admissions tool for some higher education institutions. So I think there's a separate conversation outside of this bill, because this bill is about assessment of learning for Maine educators and Maine citizens and et cetera. But we should have a conversation about how do we support our children and our families being able to access the SAT if that's what they choose. Simultaneous to our discomfort about us not using the SAT anymore because it may perhaps limit those who can assess it, I would like to point to some information provided by Mr. Senf that after administering the SAT during a school day, it resulted in about a 2 to 3% increase in applications to higher education institutions by Maine students. So not, it's an increase, but not something that's necessarily mind-blowing. I'm not terribly concerned that we're not continuing to provide these exams in during the school day because there wasn't such a huge jump in young people applying to higher education institutions. And I think that's the conversation to ask is, where are we going as a country? What is the trend around higher education institutions using SATs? And based on that question, should Maine continue to help students access it? So in terms of the bill that's before us, I will support it. I think it's appropriate for the assessment part, the learning assessment part of Maine statute. And I look forward to having other conversations about the SAT as a way to enter higher education programming.
Thank you, Representative Millett. I'd say as part of the generation who definitely felt like when we were in elementary school that we were having all of the new shiny tests rolled out on us, there is a very real need for finding that clarity. And I appreciate all the work the department is doing to find that test that is that, summative assessment that also doesn't leave our students feeling like they've been completely and utterly tested to death. And I do agree we need to find a separate vehicle to really discuss how we break down the barriers and access to post-secondary education and making it accessible within our schools, whether that's the SAT, the ACT, or another test that can break down those barriers. But I think it's important for me to try to decouple that in the conversation about this bill, and that it's more just about the assessment portion that we're looking at. And with that, I have Representative McCray, followed by Representative Crockett, followed by Representative Stearns, followed by Senator Whitson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll try not to belabor the point. During the tail end of my career, my school bought into NWEA wholeheartedly. And I was at the high school level, and we gave it to 9th graders, 10th graders, and 11th graders. And for the first time in my long career, it gave results the next day, okay? You didn't have to wait till the end of your sophomore year to find out how you were supposed to be taught throughout the sophomore year. So I love that test. It has so much to it that, to be honest with you, there aren't many of us that had enough time to take advantage of everything that it offered because it could be very prescriptive and very useful, but you had to also teach instead of just interpret the test. So because we are not using the SAT right now, I think the NWEA is a great interim assessment. And whether we continue that or not, I think we'll know that as a little bit of time and as we evaluate it as the tool or some other things by the tool. So I'm in support of the bill, and NWEA is a great interim assessment. That's my statement. I'm done. Thank you.
Representative McCray, Representative Crockett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For all the reasons that, both Representative Stearns and Representative Brennan stated, plus some personal painful history with the SAT test, I will be supporting this bill. However, I am curious, and maybe Ms. Kirk can shed some light on this. If the NWEA assessment is getting communicated to higher education institutions, and if not, what would higher education institutions be using to assess our high schoolers?
So the NWEA is not a college reportable score. So those scores, that data is not reported to our institutions or any institution of higher education.
May I follow? Maybe not a fair question for you, but so what are the colleges using to assess? Are they just dropping one tool and going strictly with the transcripts, or what is what is happening at that level? Just curious.
I don't know whether I would have a concrete understanding of what each individual institute of higher education is utilizing at this time. That I believe those decisions are made at each individual institution level, and they've adapted their application process to accommodate not having the availability of SAT scores for students specifically in the class of 2021, because those students would have been the students who would have taken the SAT last year. So those students will not have a college reportable score.
If I could just have Mr. Seneff jump in. I see your hand went up. I don't know if you had something on this point.
I did look at this, Representative Crockett, when I was looking at, went on a whole bunch of different admissions websites this weekend. And what schools are saying, some of them are just saying we are putting greater weight on all of the other elements of the application. So transcripts, extracurriculars, essays, that sort of thing. The other thing a minority of schools were doing was putting in an alternative essay. So if you didn't submit an SAT score or an ACT score, they gave you an assignment, an essay or a portfolio submission in place of the SAT.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, okay, good.
So up next, I have Representative Stearns, followed by Woodson, followed by Lyman, followed by Sampson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Kirk, you mentioned that there are waivers, tuition waivers, if you will, for the SAT. Do you know, and you may or may not, if the current amount of waivers, if we remove this as a mandatory test, which we've done for now, if the current amount of waivers would assure that any student that doesn't have the financial means to pay for the test would be able to with a waiver across the state?
So to my knowledge, the College Board doesn't have a set limit of waivers that they provide on an annual basis. So a student would have to reach out, or a school guidance counselor would have to reach out, indicate that the student is in need of a fee waiver, and the College Board would then proceed accordingly. Okay,
thank you. Might I have a follow-up?
Absolutely.
In that regard, we're paying over $60, right? We were for the SAT on a $60 per seat. And the NWEA is looking like $12.50 per seat. So I'm wondering, money-wise, in order to assure that there is not that, that equity gap in being able to access an examination that you may feel is to put forward, that you want to put forward to a college to apply. I'm wondering if some type of a cafeteria plan administered at the local level, where a student might use dollars to go toward the SAT, or they might use dollars to go toward the ACT, using that gap in funding between the $68 per student and the $12.50, if that makes any sense at all. I just throw that out as a concept.
Okay, unless anyone wants to respond to that. Seeing no takers, I have Senator Whitson, followed by Lyman, Sampson, and Salisbury.
I like the idea that Representative Stearns just brought up. I do not like being in conflict and confused about about the vote. Representative Millette brings up a great point with the endless testing. I know parents, teachers, and kids have expressed that over the years. So if we go in this new direction, are the other tests, the MEA and whatever else they use, going to be continued along with the NWEA?
So the NWEA would be our general assessment, we call it, for math and ELA for students 3 through 8 and then second and third year of high school. Our other assessments remain unchanged. So for our students with significant cognitive challenges, they would still take the MSAA, which is in math and ELA literacy. And then we have our science assessments, which are new this year. As our contract evolved, we now have a new contract with New Meridian for science, which is administered in grades 5, 8, and third year of high school. And then we have the alternate version of that through MSAA, which is administered to 5, 8, and third year of high school. So the other assessments remain somewhat consistent. It's just the NWEA for math and ELA literacy that's changing.
But these, the NWEA tests would be given to the grades that aren't necessarily being tested on the other test. In other words, would these tests be, would a child in, say, 4th grade be given 3 different tests, or are they just doing the one test, then they move on and another year they have a new test?
So the student, so in the 4th grade example that you give, Senator Woodson, that student would now be taken, instead of taking the Empower assessment, they would be taking the NWEA assessment, which would ensure that that educator has that data in a more timely fashion than they would have previously. Typically with our Empower assessment, those results would have come late summer, early fall, and by the time that data is then cleaned and verified, it's usually late September that those educators get that data back in their hands. So that's the only switch in assessment that the student would see.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Senator Woodson. I would say the questions and passion here show that clearly we should all have to take the SAT as the education committee. Not seeing as many laughs as I was hoping to get on that one. That one fell a little bit short. With that, I have Representative Lyman, Sampson, and Salisbury.
Okay, so I have a question. Thank you, Madam Chair. And I have a question, and I think I'll probably have a follow-up. So this bill is for the purpose of discontinuing the SAT as one consideration for entry into a college. Is that correct? Okay, so I am so confused about the conversation. I saw a lot of no nods. So that brings me to the follow-up, which is I'm so confused why we're having conversation about NWEA adjacent with SAT and ACT, specifically SAT, because the NWEA has been stated that it's not a college reportable score. The NWEA needs to be immediate because it gives, provides information to the teacher for instructional planning right at that moment. The SAT is for a purpose at the end of the junior year, does not need to be immediate because it's an achievement score that's going to be part of a determination for college placement. So I'm really struggling with why we're clumping the NWEA conversation with the SAT conversation, because they're really 2 very different assessments for very different reasons. And that's why I had the question of, where is this bill trying to take us to?
Absolutely, Representative Lyman. I'm going to jump in real quick, and then I see Mr. Seneff has his hand up, and we'll definitely get this clarified for you. I think this is just getting at the heart of the confusion and passion around the issue of testing and the difference between summative assessments that we're using to really check in with where our students are, and the use of something like the SAT and the ACT for that summative assessment versus a whole other separate conversation about what tests we're using to be able to, prepare our students for college. So I don't know, Mr. Seneff, I saw your hand go down, so I don't know if you didn't want to weigh in on this.
I can try to just sum up where we are, if that's helpful. So this bill, all this bill does is say that the SAT cannot be the test that the state uses for statewide assessment. So right now, the law doesn't say anything about the SAT. It's totally silent on the SAT. This adds a sentence that says, in this section of the law that talks about the need for a state assessment test, it says that assessment test can't be the SAT. And that is the reason that that language is being proposed, is because up until this past fall, the SAT was that test for 11th graders. And the conversation about the NOEA is being had because that is the test that is now going to, at least for an interim period, replace the SAT for the purposes of assessment. And the conversation more about colleges is reflective of a concern that if the SAT is no longer used for assessment purposes, students will not have as easy access to the SAT so that they will have taken it for the purposes of school admissions. I think that hopefully clarifies it a little bit.
Does that help, Representative Lyman?
Actually, it does a lot. So you're saying it's just taking the language that the SAT is not going to be the statewide assessment they want the NUIA to be. And it doesn't have anything at all to do with the purpose of the testing.
Exactly.
I got it. Thank you.
Of course. That's what we're here for. I have Representative Sampson, Representative Salisbury, Representative Roach, Representative Brennan. You can hit your space button, Representative Sampson.
All right, that's right. I have to remember that because I hit the wrong button and all of a sudden everything go black and oh, scary. Anyway,
hold it
thank you,
down
Madam Chair.
the space button. So if anyone wants to use that, if you hold the space button while you talk, it'll keep you.
Thank you. So okay, that was I think somewhat helpful. I'm still kind of stuck on the fact that, I mean, essentially the DOE unilaterally decided we're not going forward with the SAT. So my first thought on this whole bill is, until we have an actual replacement for this, why are we, I'm uncomfortable, I guess I should say, with having this interim. I mean, if they want to use it, that's fine, but to have it be something that we wouldn't be putting in the statute, we'd just be pulling out the SAT. But we don't have something that's comparable to replace it with. And so I'm really kind of uncomfortable with this because I feel like the NUIA and the SAT or ACT, where it's kind of like apples and oranges. I understand what was just said, but still to my concern is that we are pulling something out, not having the proper replacement, and we don't know what the collateral damage, so to speak, would be for students. All of a sudden, you know, the ground is shifting under them. And those who want to go on to college, how is this going to impact them? And are we going to be disadvantaging them? So those are, I guess I have more questions now than I had before, but I'm thinking, why can't we just put a pause on this whole bill, wait until the department actually has made some sort of a determination going forward? Or do we direct the department in what we would like to see them replace it with? So those are questions for my colleagues.
Thank you, Representative Sampson. And obviously, I think we all have, you know, different feelings about this, but I think the department's made it clear that they're going through that process, like you said. So just to echo that, I have Representative Salisbury, followed by Representative Roach, followed by Representative Brennan.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I really, I don't have anything of value or any questions to ask, but what I wanted to offer was a perspective. I worked in the fire service and EMS for a long time, and we used to have a saying that 200 years of tradition unimpeded by progress. And I feel like that's kind of where we're at. We realized this last year that the SAT wasn't going to be the right assessment because of COVID. So the Department of Education made that change. And I think that this progression is, we know that we have this other assessment that we can use that will give us real-time evaluation of what the students' needs are, because that's what we need right now. We're in an unprecedented time, and that's what we need. We know that we're not going to hurt students by not having the SAT. We've shown that by some data, and So I think that we're in a good place. The Department of Education is telling us we have this assessment that we can use that gives us real-time assessment. That's the progress. We're making progress by saying, we recognize this other test isn't working. We're not currently using it. Let's move forward. Ms. Kirk mentioned that they have a group of educators that's meeting to talk about, evaluate going forward. And I just feel like that's the progress that we're making. We're recognizing the need and we're moving forward with it.
Thank you, Representative Salisbury. And I will say that your thoughts are always of value, as are all of the members of this committee. Just reminding everyone out there. There are no such things as bad questions or thoughts. I have Representative Roach, but there are such things as massacring one's name. So I have Representative Roach followed by Representative Brennan.
Well, thank you. And that's a new thing for me, the space bar. Thanks. I appreciate that. Could you just, maybe Sam, I'm asking this to Sam, can you read the name of this bill again, please, just so I understand?
Name of the bill is an act to change the statutory, oops, I'm sorry, I'm reading the wrong. I'm getting ahead of myself. An act to discontinue the use of the SAT in Maine schools.
This is one of my favorite things. I'm also a selectman, and one of my favorite things is when they come up with these things for me that I have to vote on, and it's already been done. If we've already discontinued, I guess I just wasted an hour of my life. If we've already discontinued this as use, the department did it without our input. I'm not sure why we even have to have this, and I'm new to this, so maybe there is a reason. And two, the question would go to someone. Could you tell me how many days? I believe, if I remember right, when we did the NWAs years ago, it was 4 school days, 3. I see the hand going up. 3 to 4 school, right? So here's an issue that I find in this is that if you're an AP teacher, they're going to be very much against that, because 3 school days out of an AP course is very tough, never mind snow days and everything like this, to get at Wells High School, we have sophomores that start, that's when the AP classes start for them. They could take one as a sophomore, then lead up, and anyone can take an AP course at Wells High School. We're not testing into it or anything, but so we're going to lose days, and those teachers are going to really struggle with those loss of days. The SAT is 1 day, and again, I always find myself fighting for an SAT that I don't like personally, but I just don't see how this is a good idea.
Duly noted, Representative Roach. Representative Brennan?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm really glad we've had this discussion. This is an important discussion to have about student assessment. And I didn't think this bill was going to provoke this kind of discussion, but I think it's been a healthy discussion. And I agree that there are 2 or 3 other things that we might want to explore about this going forward. But given the time and given the amount of discussion, I'm going to make a motion at this time, and maybe we can move forward with the clarity of having a motion on the table. So I would move ought to pass on LD 277, and the amendment would be the SAT will not be used in Maine public schools for the purpose of assessing student academic performance, period. The DOE will develop an alternative student assessment system that is not discriminatory or inherently biased. The DOE will report to the Joint Standing Committee on Education and Cultural Affairs by January 15, 2022 regarding an alternative assessment design.
Do I have a second? Seconded by Representative McCray. So we have a motion on the floor and then discussion. I have Senator Woodson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Do we have any feedback or information from other states that are progressive and doing a good job with education on what they're doing? Similar to this, what information do we have from other states? I guess that's for Ms. Kurt.
there's a variety of approaches going on right now. Some states are seeking waivers to not administer any assessments period over this assessment period. Maine's elected to not follow suit with that we realize that it is important to know where our students are to get that data in the hands of educators. So at the moment, due to the pandemic and where different states are in relation to the pandemic and their instructional decisions that they're making, whether they're remote or in person, it's a mixed bag at the moment, if I'm completely honest, Senator.
Thank you. And Madam Chair, could we have Representative Brennan read that statement he just made again?
Absolutely. Representative Brennan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The SAT will not be used in Maine public schools for the purpose of assessing student academic performance. The DOE will develop an alternative student assessment system that is not discriminatory or inherently biased. The DOE will report to the Joint Standing Committee on Educational and Cultural Affairs by January 15, 2022 regarding an alternative assessment design.
So I would just add that motion does not preclude a school district from offering the SAT.
That is correct.
For college purposes and other issues. And just to remind us, because I know we definitely got a little bit
It's
off
only for student assessment purposes.
Yeah, and can still be offered for other aspects. So I have Representative Roach, followed by Representative Millette, followed by Representative Stearns.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. So I'm going, obviously I'll probably be a no vote on this, but the one is because it's already been done, so I'm not sure. But then I'm wondering who when you make a motion like that, who judges a bias? Like I just went online while we were talking to look at the NWA, and there's a ton of info out there that's saying that's a bias test. So I mean, I think whatever test you're going to find is that is going to be the case. And who's the judge of the bias test? I just think they've already done it, the Department of Ed, and it's done deal already. So.
Completely understood, Representative Roach. I would just use this moment to add in, I think it's just another indicator of how hard it is to do these assessments to make sure that everyone's on the same page. And I'll use my soapbox to say, you know, this is why we have to trust teachers and those who are on a daily basis with our students who can see firsthand what that's like. So I'll get off my soapbox for that one, but just a little bit.
I'd be up for no test if you want. That'd be great for us. So.
I was going to say, Representative Roach, that was one of my first bills when I first got elected for no test 3rd grade and under. So I'd be happy to have that conversation offline. I have Representative Millette, followed by Representative Stearns, followed by Representative Sampson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just want to point everybody to Sam's excellent bill analysis on page 3. There's a list of states that use the SAT for federal testing, accountability, and other assessment tests. And I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 states. So by no means is it a majority of states that use the SAT for assessment purposes. In fact, it's a minority of states that do. So if that provides any, I hope that provides another data point. I'm unclear as to the amendment and how it actually is different than what we already have. I actually have a concern as well about not be biased or anything, because then who determines that? I mean, I'm actually satisfied with the language that's in the bill as is. So I'd rather support the bill as is. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Absolutely. I have Representative Stearns, followed by Representative Sampson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have similar concerns. Number one, procedurally, I do not like amendments on the fly, particularly in this format where we can't see the thing in writing. Secondly, if we do want to follow the good Representative Brennan's amendment, I would follow up with the same concerns that Senator Daughtry had regarding the exclusiveness of the language in that. So I would hope that during, if this were to go forward, any language review would be very important in this case. With that said, I hate to table things, but I'm wondering if we shouldn't take a minute, step back, perhaps craft the intent of that amendment and move forward. But I would leave that up to the committee, of course.
Thank you, Representative Stearns. I think that's an excellent point and definitely something I would consider. But before we consider a tabling motion, I just want to make sure that Representative Sampson is able to chime in.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just tried the space bar. It spaced out. It didn't work.
Oh.
So maybe I have a malfunctioning computer. Who knows? Possible. Anyway, I like the fact that I can't even remember who said it now, about the fact that we need to be listening to our teachers. Was that you, Senator Daughtry? Yes. Thank you. Words of wisdom. And we do have a teacher that just retired, who has been weighing in. And one of the points that I've made, is that we are comparing apples and oranges here with a NWEA, SAT, ACT. So I want to put that out there. And I can't believe that I brought a bill forward last session, basically saying we need to get rid of the SATs. However, I think the fact that we're kind of blessing what the department has already done, that sort of rubs me the wrong way. Number two, the fact that they are going to be replacing it with something that is not comparable to the SAT. And I think we should be replacing it or have a plan, know what we're going to replace it with, instead of having this sort of ambiguous, we're not sure what it's going to be. So I say all that to say that I am going to vote against this measure, which I cannot even, initially I was right on board, but the more we discuss this, the more I have serious concerns. So I thank you.
Representative Sampson. So we did have a potential request from Representative Stearns about tabling this bill. And obviously, a tabling motion is a non-debatable motion. So before we get to that point, I just wanted to check in and sort of take everyone's temperature. Is this something that we'd like to, maybe sit on a little bit, considering, I think if you look at the conversation here, I think it shows, the passion of just like what a complicated issue this is. So just sort of looking for feedback from everyone. Senator Woodson?
I'd prefer more time to digest all this information.
Absolutely. I'm seeing nods and thumbs up. Representative Brennan, I saw your hand go up and down, so I don't know if you had anything you want to add.
Yeah, I would be satisfied. I'd make a motion to table LD 277. We don't have to make a time certain, but in the more immediate future.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Senator Woodson. All those in favor of tabling this bill, please raise your hands. It is unanimous of those present and voting. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Ms. Kirk. Thank you for your time. And I think at this point, I always joke, since the first time I've been on the education committee, that every time we discuss standardized testing, that the committee should have to take a portion of the test we're discussing. But after this morning, I don't know if I want to hold on to that. So with that, we will move to our next bill. We are on to, let me grab my gavel real quickly. I need a bigger desk. So before I gavel in for our next work session, Sam, were we able to have Senator Pouliot with us? I know he had wanted to be here present for his bill.
He was on, Senator, so I'll reach out and see what happened, because he was definitely on earlier.
Okay, I just want to be mindful of the bill sponsor hoping to be here. So,
We also have Representative Cloutier for the next bill.
For the LD 380.
I think 430.
440. Because 440 we've already voted on.
4:30, maybe.
For 4:30, okay. Let's see, okay, we'll just continue to go in order, and if we can't get the bills, the bill sponsor, we can table or move accordingly, but.
I'll try to track him down.
Perfect. So I'm going to open the work session on LD 380, an act to change the statutory cap on virtual public charter school enrollment, from Senator Pouliot and Mr. Seneff, if you'll kick off the analysis.
So this is LD 380, an act to change the statutory cap on virtual public charter school enrollment. So just make a note that a lot of the same information is applicable to LD 430 as well. As we're going through this, I just wanted to note that. So this bill changes the maximum total enrollment at all virtual public charter schools from 1,000 students to 2% of the total statewide enrollment for the grade level served by the virtual public charter schools.
Hello.
Oh, have you, Senator Pouliot? We're just going over the analysis right now.
Sure, sounds good.
I just read the title and the description, so you didn't miss much. So testimony, the committee heard a testimony in favor of changing the cap, heard testimony against changing the cap, and heard testimony neither for nor against. There was some information requested by the committee. It was asked how many virtual charter schools exist in Maine, what their current enrollments are, and how many students are on the waiting list. So there's two virtual charter schools in Maine. There's the Maine Connections Academy, which was opened in 2014. There are 458 students enrolled. The Maine Virtual Academy opened 2015, 430 students, and there's a waiting list total of 278 as of the last report. There was a question about the 2% and what the denominator was. So where is this 2% derived from? So 2% means 2% of all students enrolled statewide in grades 7 to 12. There was a question asked about the profit status of the virtual charter schools. So both schools are considered public charter schools. However, they're both affiliated with for-profit entities. The Maine Virtual Academy is associated with Stride Inc. and Maine Connections Academy with Connections Education LLC. So I think that's not quite a straightforward answer, but they do work with these for-profit entities. So the data underlying the virtual school monitoring reports was requested. So in your emails, you have two pieces of information. One is from Mr. Jeremy Jones with the commission that gets into some of this underlying data, and the other is from DOE. So I specifically asked for the monitoring of reports. The reports say basically, you know, this metric was meant, this metric was not meant. But you should have in those reports the actual numerators and denominators for those metrics, so you can see specifically what that underlying data looked like. And again, those are attached in the emails. I attached the current statute. It's a little long, so copying and paste it was a little wordy, but you can link it right here. So just as a note, LD 513, which was an act to limit the number of students and prevent the addition of grade levels of virtual public charter schools, was introduced in the 129th. It received an OTPA, ONTP vote out of committee, passed the House and the Senate, sent to the governor. The bill became law without signature on June 9th, 2019. You have a link to the enacted law there. And that bill, as amended, established the 1,000 student cap. So that cap is quite recent. I attached links to recent monitoring reports for both of the charter schools, as well as the link to older reports, so you can go back and dig into those if you like. Also a link to a third-party evaluation report from December 2020, and another a White Barn report on the Maine Virtual Academy from January 2019 was emailed to you. The only issue I saw was that, as I think was noted, the bill language is a bit ambiguous as to what that 2% is calculated from. It's a little unclear on its face which grades are included, whether the 2% is calculated statewide or district-wide, and at what point in time that 2% is calculated. Is it annual? Is it quarterly? Kind of what's the pool you're drawing from, and when are you drawing from that pool to calculate that 2%? And then also just just a note that LD 430 is very much related. So when you're looking at this one, it's helpful to look at both. Sorry, I did actually copy and paste at the bottom here the current statute, so you had it right in front of you. And that is what I have for you on this bill. So I will stop sharing. There we go.
Thank you very much. So thoughts, questions, statements? Don't worry, this is not a bill about requiring the SAT at all charter schools. I like Representative Crockett's response. Senator Whitson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to get things going here. So right now we have a 1,000 student cap, and this bill recommends that we increase that by 2%. Now, is that 2% a year, 2% what? How does that work?
I think that's a little bit of the ambiguity. I think that would need to be, it does actually say total statewide for grade levels served, but I think that needs to be tightened up a little bit, because it doesn't say like at which point, when do you measure that? I think you could also clarify. Yeah, I know that people reading this bill were confused by that in testimony as well. So I think I would be more specific.
Could maybe Representative Paulette step in and answer that?
Representative
Sure.
Pouliot, hold on. Oh, you're unmuted. Okay, Senator Pouliot.
Sure. And I apologize having to join by phone. I miscommunicated a little bit on the start time of this. So my intent here, Senator Woodson, was 2% of the 2% of the current enrolled students any given year. So for instance, right now, that would yield approximately 1,680 total. And really the whole idea here for everyone to know is so that we don't have to keep bringing this back before the legislature all the time. It's 2%. If that student body population goes down, the cap would go down. If it goes up, it goes up. So it would be 2%, not less than 1,000.
Do you have follow-up on that, Senator Whitson?
No, that's good. Thank you.
There was a question for me, but I'll circle back. I have Representative Stearns, Representative Crockett, and Representative Sampson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wasn't present for the testimony on this, but I did read in reading Dr. Hess's testimony, unless I misread it, it sounded like we haven't met the current cap at this point. There's still some leeway, and I'm wondering if that's accurate.
We do have Jeremy Jones, who is the head of the Maine Charter Commission, who I think would probably, I see Mr. Seneff shaking his head or nodding his head, that he would probably be the best one to answer that. So Mr. Jones, full warning, admitting you in. Mr. Jones, I don't know if you're able to hear the question, if you have a response to that. You should be able to press the space bar to unmute yourself. I'm just going to hold it down while you talk.
I'm sorry, was there a question for me? I just got on.
No worries. I think, Representative, if you wouldn't mind rephrasing your question again, so Mr. Jones could respond.
Certainly. Mr. Jones, during the testimony, the written testimony that Dr. Hess submitted on this, the way I read it, it sounded like we were a ways from meeting the current cap, that has been put on the virtual charter schools. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir. By strictly looking at the raw numbers, that is accurate. Right now, we've taken careful consideration to ensure that the virtual charter schools have the capacity to serve the number of students that they're currently serving, while also being thoughtful about reaching that cap. And so there are also questions of equity involved in this situation, given that there will continue to be families on the waiting list, even if we go all the way to that cap. And so we're currently assessing how we can ensure that the families that want to attend the virtuals are able to, and do so in a thoughtful and fair way, so that the virtual schools can continue to increase academic performance while working toward that cap. So it is a correct statement to say that we have not yet reached the cap. However, if we took all of the students that were on the waiting list right now, we would far exceed that cap. And so we're trying to achieve a balance there.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So up next, Representative Crockett, did you still have a question?
Actually, my question was answered by Senator Pouliot, but I actually have a new question now.
Sounds good. It's you, then Representative Sampson, myself, and then Senator Woodson.
Yeah, and my earlier question was about the numbers and Senator Pouliot confirmed that 2% would be 1,680. I would just say currently, the number of students attending the virtual schools is about 50% of that. It's about 880. And waiting list is a little over 200. So, it certainly doesn't get the number close to the ask of 2%. It pushes it a little bit over 1,100. So just clarifying those numbers a bit.
Thank you very much. Don't know if anyone wants to respond, but not seeing any hands jumping up. I have Representative Sampson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I have a question for Mr. Jones, but maybe one of the heads of the schools can address some of these questions. So I'll throw it out there. Do we have them in the waiting room? I'm just wondering who would be best to answer the question. Actually, I have a two-part question.
Sounds good. Representative Sampson, were you asking for the head of the school? Is that where you're asking?
Yeah, I can start with Mr. Jones, and then I'd have a question specific to the head of school.
We do have Dr. Brown with us, as well as, I'm trying to see if we have anyone else, as well as Walter Wallace. So why don't we start with your question for Mr. Jones?
Okay, super. Thank you, Madam Chair. So good to see you, Mr. Jones. I guess I'd like you to, for our benefit, for the committee's benefit, because there's new folks on here, if you would explain to us the process that the Charter Commission goes through to consider expanding and raising the cap. I mean, explain, in specific, some of the rubrics that you take into consideration. I think it would be a valuable exercise. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am, Representative Sampson, I appreciate that question. The performance framework is publicly available for everyone to review, and that is the foundation for performance for our charter schools. On the performance framework, the indicators range from academic performance to academic growth, all the way to financial health and well-being and board governance. So the Charter Commission takes very thoughtful consideration of all of these aspects before we allow our schools to grow within state statute. Right now, the way the practice would actually occur is that a virtual charter school would submit a proposal to the review committee at the Charter School Commission, in which they would answer myriad questions on their performance and ability to serve at the capacity that they've requested. We then undergo an investigation on our end to reconcile what they've submitted with what our data tells us. And then the review committee would make a proposal to the executive director. The executive director would then make a proposal to the rest of the commission members. And then the commission members would vote on that potential expansion. There are 7, we currently have 6 commission members, and we are awaiting the governor's approval of a 7th. And so those 7 commission members would ultimately vote on whether or not the virtual charter schools could expand in student population. When we talk about expansion of the virtual charter schools, we're really talking about a marginal rate of students. And so again, our virtual charter schools would not be able currently to exceed the 1,000 student cap. If we took all the waiting lists, we would exceed that cap. The balance that we try to strike at the commission is, again, the capacity of the charter school to serve students well, and previous performance. I hope that helps, Representative Sampson.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Can I have a follow-up, Senator Daughtry? And I'm thinking if I ask Mr. Jones the question and he can't address it, then I'm thinking that Dr. Brown might be able to.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So my question for you is around the rather emotionally politically charged bumper sticker slogan that was stated about the for-profit charter schools. And if you can speak to the fact, to the issues of the way these virtual schools purchase their resources. I mean, the public schools, they purchase devices, software, curriculum, textbooks, the list goes on, but a public school wouldn't be considered a for-profit school because they are contracting on specific things for specific items. So can you expand on that, please?
Yes, ma'am, I'd be happy to. I think it's unfortunate that that we've had this part of the debate sort of inform perspectives. The 2 virtual charter schools in the state of Maine are both nonprofit organizations that are governed by nonprofit boards. They do contract with an educational service provider in much of the same ways that districts across the state contract with a busing company or a textbook company, different things like that. So they're essentially just purchasing a service. Both of the heads of schools are in the waiting room today and can give you details on how much of their school operating budgets are taken from that educational service provider. I will tell you that it's a very small nominal rate that they purchase services. They're hiring their teachers from the state of Maine. They're also building and developing their own curriculum to customize for students in that way. And so, they are nonprofit organizations that subsequently purchase services just like all schools in the state.
And if I can just jump in, I just want to just remind everyone, just keeping in mind our last conversation on the SAT bill and how we got down a big rabbit hole of a tangent, that, there is a whole conversation that's separate about, for-profit, nonprofit structure, who the schools are contracting with. But I would like us to try to keep the bill conversations focused to what is the capacity and need of Maine students for the virtual charters. So I think that's just a reminder to all of us, because we could definitely all rehash many different conversations about capacity and need. So
thank you, Senator. I wanted to just clarify that because there was some confusion, and that was
it came up in the public hearing. So I just
that was it. Yep. Thank you.
Absolutely. Did you have another question, Representative Sampson?
Nope, I'm all set. Thank you so much.
Okay, we have myself, followed by Senator Woodson, followed by Representative Salisbury, followed by Representative Sampson again. I saw your hand shoot up, so I'll put you after Representative Salisbury. I just wanted to say, first off, we talked about how we haven't met the cap. And I'm just wondering, thinking about Senator Pouliot, the way that you described the 2% cap, it feels like a fluctuating cap. So obviously, this would be up to the folks who are, administering the charters, but it would seem that a fluctuating number would actually be more unfair for our schools and create an uneven foundation. I mean, if you're thinking of it, just trying to plan, according to teachers and staff and, how you move forward, it's going back and forth and yo-yoing like your allowance. Now I understand enrollments in all of our schools fluctuate from every year, but if you're like where you're allowed to get is literally going up and down each year, feels like that's almost more of a mechanism. And so I think I sort of go back to Mr. Seneff's bill analysis that the 2%, and I think it was maybe Senator Woodson who said it's 2, just feels funky and weird. And I'm just sort of thinking, I guess my statement, less of a question, is I'm thinking about this is wondering what our true capacity is, what the true need is. You know, we've heard when we're looking at, you know, what has been going on with remote learning with the, you know, pandemic, we've heard huge issues of equity and availability for students to be able to access remote learning of any type, just due to the lack of broadband expansion. And so I just feel like I'm curious and wondering if there's a way, and I know it'd be interesting to see if there's some work on this of like, what is the true need? Like, what is the true cap? You know, what is a number that's not just pulled out of thin air? That's one that actually meets what we need for students, because I know that's definitely something that's been going on in prior years and in prior bills. So I think I'm just trying to work out in my head, how do we really figure out what that cap is? And I see Mr. Jones sort of shaking his head on there and just sort of wanting to have a number that really, you know, 2% going up and down also doesn't, you know, fit well with me. Just picking 1,000 out of thin air also doesn't feel right. So I think maybe my challenge to the committee and others who are gonna ask questions after me is, you know, how do we get to that? How do we pick that number, and how do we, you know, have it informed by data and what it's actually like in the field? So with that, I'll throw that back out to all of you. I have Senator Woodson, and then Representative Salisbury, Representative Sampson, Representative McCray, and then Representative Brennan. So Senator Woodson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That is, as I mentioned before, one of my concerns about the 2%. So I agree with you. Another thing, I think the cap does need to be lifted. And many of our decisions of bills that have come before us this year is a result of COVID. And not knowing what the end result is going to be as far as the needs of students. And in my district, there was a number of parents and children that are interested in doing the virtual schools. And so I support an increase. I guess I'm not sure on what is the right number. And I think we do have to look at what to meet the needs of the kids. And so that is why I would support some kind of an increase. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Woodson. I'm just going to take another split second that maybe we're putting the cart before the horse unless we find, you know, first figure out what that actual need is, and, you know, not just pulling that uncomfortable 2%, but just throwing that out there. I have Representative Salisbury followed by Representative McCray. Representative Sampson, I saw you put your hand down. Is that correct? So I have Representative Salisbury, Representative McCray, Representative Brennan, Representative Millett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, my question, I'm still not understanding why we're increasing capacity when we have a waiting list. In my notes, I wrote down that there was something mentioned about approval from the governor. I'm not sure if I'm matching that up correctly, but I still don't understand why we would raise the number when we have a waiting list. So I'd like some more information about that. And then also, with the pandemic and we had something, I'm assuming most districts had a remote by choice option where students could go fully remote for the school year. How is something like that going to play in if school districts decide to continue with a program like that? How will that impact the potential need or no need for a virtual separate academy?
Yes, ma'am, Representative Salisbury. I appreciate those questions. I think I apologize. I wasn't speaking clearly earlier. I meant that the governor will be approving our final member of the commission. So we're currently sitting at 6. We will eventually have 7 members. Those commission members vote on they have the final vote on whether or not the charter schools are able to expand based on.
No, I got that. It was before when we had our public hearing. I had written down whatever date that was way back. I had written about something to do with and I don't know if maybe it was related to that, but is there, as far as or maybe just someone explaining why there is a waiting list, what is the holdup to adding those students into the slots that are currently available?
Sure. Okay. I understand much better. Thank you. Well, right now, the commission has approved a cap of our own for each virtual charter school. And that is based on their capacity to serve students, their track record of success as well. And charters, the two virtual charter schools would then submit their own proposal to expand their operations. We are considering current proposals to expand, but we want to do that in a very thoughtful and measured way. So this to us is not just expand the cap and then, you know, let's open the floodgates. That's not the purpose of the Charter School Commission. And certainly we take it as an advantage to allow for a very thoughtful process so that we can consider all of the data, that we can consider the capacity. And when those things have been met and determined, then we would allow the virtual charter schools to expand. Having been a school operator myself and a school leader, I think that this type of moving forward works to our advantage to ensure that we maintain a level of excellence in serving those students.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Representative Salisbury, did you have a follow-up?
I do. So right now, the issue is more that there's not schools available or the capacity within the two schools to accept those people, those students that are on the waiting list. Is that kind of right?
Right now, there are questions of capacity, and you know, we also have just questions of like, what is our demand, to Senator Daughtry's questions and concerns. You know, the current amount of students on the waiting list would exceed the cap. And so as we're considering the proposals to expand the virtual charter schools, which they've submitted to us, we're trying to be thoughtful about, you know, would that mean it's just 500 at each campus? How do you create a bubble so that, you know, charter schools don't inadvertently exceed and go to 1,010 students, because that enrollment often fluctuates in the real world. And so we're just trying to be very thoughtful about how do we approach their proposals to expand, so that any mom or dad in the state of Maine who wants to send their kid to a virtual school has that option.
So right now, thank you very much for that, Mr. Jones. So right now, say that the number was increased to the 2% of the current, so to 1680, there's not currently virtual schools available to handle those students. Say if it changed tomorrow. I know that's not that easy, but if it did change tomorrow, we don't currently have the virtual schools available to handle that number of students.
Under state law, there are only 10 charter schools that operate in the state. And so 2 of those 10 are virtual charter schools. You could imagine a scenario where the virtual charter schools were able to expand their capacity with that demand. Again, that would not negate a process that they would have to follow to apply to the Charter Commission, and then the Charter Commission do that investigation before the commission members vote to approve that expansion.
Okay, so the answer then would be no.
The short answer would be no.
Okay, all right, good. Thank you very much for that. That was very helpful.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Representative Salisbury and Mr. Jones. And I will, unfortunately, we're at the time of session where people are having to jump in and out for other bills, so I may have to jump out for another bill. I just wanted to say real quick before I get called for that, I think from what you just said, Mr. Jones, and also from Representative Salisbury, I think I just keep coming back to this point if we don't know what that true number is, and that the capacity isn't just the capacity within students and infrastructure, it's also the physical capacity within the schools. And I really feel like that we've got to find a way, you know, to find what that actual number is, and wondering if there's some mechanism, I don't know if anyone on the committee has any idea about this, of doing, you know, a true look and like a study of what the capacity is for this. And I am seeing Representative Millette waving her hand up and down, so I don't know if she wants to respond to my question real quick. Oh, she's shaking her head. Representative Millette.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, I have been listening to the committee discussion and Mr. Jones, and I'm definitely feeling like a legislative study is a really good way to help guide this discussion. And so I've been kind of jotting down some ideas about what that could look like. But we definitely have a vehicle as a legislature to do that. And I'm happy to put forward some of my thoughts when you think it's the correct time.
I would say Representative Millette, that's definitely something I'd be interested in considering. We do have a couple other people in the queue. I had you mentioned, so why don't we circle back to that?
Okay.
I have Representative McCray, followed by Representative Brennan, followed by Representative Millette, followed by Representative Dodge, followed by Representative Sampson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Jones, thank you very much. I have to say that I very much respect the fact that your commission is not going to allow these two virtual schools to expand right to the 1,000 point because you can. That to me is a very wise choice. And I think having restraint to do that shows integrity. I do. Nonetheless, you've got about an 11% of growth that is allowable from 880 to 1,000. And if you've got 200 plus students in the waiting list, I would be more comfortable if this were to go forward, if some sort of metric were allowed by your two virtual schools to include that extra 100, 110, 115 kids, students, and then come back and say, look, we've maxed out, because it kind of doesn't make sense to me that you've got the waiting list and you've got space for 100 or so more of them. And I'm sure that there's some way to discern which of those 200 plus students are most capable. And I'm saying that with respect to the fact that your schools have shown restraint, or your commission has shown restraint to just filling them. So could you address that, please?
Sure, Representative McCray, I appreciate the opportunity to talk about this. So I think there are a couple of pressure points that we constantly look at. I think, and I think this is also conflated with the question around, like, what is the true demand for these types of schools? What we do know is that, there are certainly fluctuations that exist all across the state, to Senator Daughtry's point. We also know that we want to, at the commission, we want to be the strongest advocate for what excellent schools look like. And so, we really demand the most from our charter schools. And right now, we simply don't have the opportunity to just allow 1,600 students to go to virtual charter schools. So I'm not sure, Representative McCray, if you might be able to rephrase the question just a little bit, just so I can, exactly answer what you hoped.
Well, I understand yes, thank you very much. I understand the intent of the bill is to raise the cap to 1,680 by virtue of the 2% clause. I understand that. It just seems to me to be logical that when your schools are capable of moving up to their max of 1,000, that this bill would be more appropriate, it'd be more convincing to the committee that, okay, we have discerned that out of our 200 plus waiting on the waiting list, that we've been able to add 100 of those because they are the most capable, the best applications to our school out of that waiting list that would match up with the qualifications of the 880 that you now have in place.
Sure. I see. Yeah, I think I'm following you. Well, so one, I certainly don't want to be the one to determine which kids get to attend the schools and which kids don't. I think that is a difficult place to be in as an educator. And I will also say that our virtual charter schools are open enrollment public schools. And so we can't deny admission to any student based on an application that would include, previous test scores or capability or anything like that. It's a blind lottery. And so we would be in a situation where we would accept enough kids to fill the demand based on a blind lottery, which doesn't consider student capacity. You know, as an educator, I deeply believe that all students are capable. But to your point, I also think that the virtual schools are specific types of schools that parents are interested in enrolling their students for whatever reason it is important to that particular family. And so, we again want to be thoughtful about that growth. And so we are currently considering expansion requests from the virtual charter schools. Should they meet the rigorous bar that we've set for them, we could very much be in the same situation 365 days from now, where we're having another conversation around, okay, we've reached the 1,000 student cap, and there is still demand. What is our ability to serve that extra demand at that point? So we may well have reached the cap by this point next year.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. That helps.
Yes, sir.
Okay, up next, I have Representative Brennan, followed by Representative Representative Millette, followed by Representative Dodge and Representative Sampson. And I do have to run to another bill. So Representative Brennan, I'll be passing the gavel over to you, but I will put the order of everyone in the chat so you can take over.
Well, can you also send me the scorecard of who's supposed to talk next or had their hand raised?
I'll put that in the text and send it to you as well, so everyone can work together. Go team, no pressure.
I just want to make two quick comments. One, it was mentioned that the 1,000 cap was arbitrary, and that's not necessarily true. At the time the bill was presented and we talked about a cap of 1,000, there are about 800 students in the two virtual schools. I consulted with representatives from the virtual schools, and they were talking about a cap of 1,200. And so we kind of thought a median point at 1,000 was a good compromise between 1,200 and between the 800 students and the existing waiting list at that time. So it was not a number that was picked out of the air. It was reflective of attendance at that particular time. But I do think the overriding issue here is not the cap and not the waiting list, but it's the performance of the virtual charter schools. And in 2019, both attendance issues and academic performance issues were huge issues facing both the virtual charter schools. And I think until those are resolved over time in a very clear way, this whole discussion about caps and waiting lists are secondary to focusing on academic performance. So I'm willing to look at something going forward that would look at what the capacity might be around the state for virtual learning opportunities. But I'm not as interested right now in looking at ways to lift the cap. So I believe our senator has left. And based on what I'm seeing, I see Representative Sampson next and Representative Dodge after that. So Representative Sampson.
She left a different order in the chat, I think.
Thank you, Representative. It's actually Senator Daughtry gave you a list in the chat.
Okay, so I had Representative Millette next, Representative
Dodge, and then me.
Representative Sampson.
Don't want to be accused of button in line.
If that's the worst thing you're accused of, Representative Sampson, that would be okay. So Representative Millette.
Oh, yeah, I actually had I thought I was at the end of the line and then other people got in. So again, I have a suggestion for a legislative study. I've had the chance to kind of look at other legislative studies. And so I don't know if Representative, you'd like me to go through what I'm thinking at this point.
Well, I think Representative Millette, it would be helpful to have a motion on the table that we can discuss as opposed to having a general conversation about the bill or about charter schools. So if you want to make a motion at this point, it might help to focus the discussion.
Okay. I'm gonna try. Sam, bear with me. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna move ought to pass as amended. And I believe the amendment makes it into a resolve, which is to authorize a commission to study Maine's need and infrastructure for virtual learning. Because I think, frankly, this conversation is even bigger than just the virtual charter schools, given everything we've just gone through with the pandemic. And so so I would say I'm following, just so everybody knows, I'm following an existing legislative study that I found online. I'm not completely winging this. So there would be 2 members from the Senate appointed by the President of the Senate, including 1 member from each of the 2 parties holding the largest number of seats. 3 members of the House of Representatives appointed by the Speaker, including members of the 2 parties holding the largest number of seats. Then I would say a representative from the commissioner, or an appointee by the commissioner, or a representative. I'm not quite sure what that language is. An appointee from the Charter Commission, a student representative appointed by the Speaker, a parent representative appointed by the President, a member from MSMA, a member from MPA, member from MEA, a representative from the disability community to be appointed by the Speaker, a representative from the broadband industry to be appointed by the President, and it's authorized to meet up to 6 times. And then there's some standard language around the chairs being the first name senator and the first name rep, if that can be included, and also the convening of the commission. Sam, I'm looking at LD 1614 of 2019, where it's got a great paragraph in section 4, which is basically the appointment shall be made no later than 30 days following the effective date of the resolve. The appointing authority shall notify the executive director, et cetera, et cetera. And staff assistance shall be provided by the, let's see, blah, blah, blah. Shall provide, the legislative council shall provide necessary staffing services to the commission. And that it should report back to the committee. Let's go with December 4th. And then duties and resolve, basically what I'm thinking is it's going to assess the need for virtual learning through both in public charter and public schools, and assessing the current infrastructure. So basically questions of capacity. So as Mr. Jones said, questions of capacity and questions of demand, or somebody said that earlier. So that's what I'm thinking is, I think I need a second.
So Representative Dodge has seconded the motion, and Representative Millette, if it might just be helpful to just go back and restate the motion. You don't have to say all the people that you want on it, but just the purpose of the study commission would be to You're muted.
Yes, because I thought I was done.
Yeah, well,
assess the capacity for providing virtual learning,
Okay.
both in public charter and public schools. And that also includes assessing the need and current supply. I'm just trying to get at some of the questions and discussion that had come up. Well, now I guess it's this afternoon.
Okay. So it's been moved and seconded, ought to pass. And is there further discussion? And I have Representative Dodge and then Representative Sampson. And maybe before I get to both of those, I will ask our legislative analyst, Sam, he has his hand up. So Sam, did you have a question?
Just a note that the motion should be ought to pass as amended.
Right.
Versus ought to pass.
Yep. Okay, so now I got Representative Dodge and then Representative Sampson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. A couple of my questions have already been addressed. The 1,000 number not being random and the concern about academic and attendance performance standards. My other questions are perhaps for Mr. Jones. Thank you for being here today. To try to get beyond your general answers, which may be a moot point now that we are moving in a bit of a different direction. How many current students have access problems due to broadband limitations? How many teachers need to be hired to approach the cap, and why have you not yet hired them? And when you speak about capacity and infrastructure, are you in fact talking about what number of staff and what specifically about bricks and mortar? Those were going to be my questions. I defer if those are currently not appropriate. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Jones, did you have quick answers to those questions?
Sure, Representative Brennan. I'll do my best to be brief. Thank you, Representative Dodge. It's good to be here and good to see you as well. Just quickly, the proposals that we are considering that the virtual schools have offered to expand would actually not require a big expansion of hiring teachers because they can distribute their teachers over multiple grade levels, and so they would be able to maintain their student ratios, their current student ratios, with very few needs to hire new teachers. So there is capacity that exists, which is why we're considering those proposals, and also why we may reach the 1,000 student cap pretty quickly. I hope that answers your questions, Representative Dodge. My attempt is to be brief.
Did you have a follow-up, Representative Dodge? No. Okay, Representative Sampson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I have just a comment, a question, and then a friendly amendment. Is that okay?
So far.
Okay. So I want to just make it clear, and Representative Brennan, you can maybe help me with this, to address the issue of the quote unquote arbitrary 1,000 number cap and the discussion with the virtual schools. If I remember correctly, the virtual schools were saying 1,200, and that was pretty much with an understanding there would be no cap. So I just need to put that out there. I have a question for Mr. Jones, that if he would please address the issue of performance that was brought up.
Yes, Representative Sampson, I'd love to. I know folks have taken the time to read the annual report that we submitted to the commissioner, and I appreciate everyone taking the time to do that. I think that one thing to note in the annual report is currently being amended because we had uncovered a situation where our two virtual charter schools were measuring their own performance in different ways. And so we are being fair to both of those charter schools to compare apples to apples. And we have in the materials today included that amendment to you so that you can see both raw performance data as well as what we call the conditional growth index, which is students who are very close to meeting their goals. I will also mention that the performance framework of the Charter Commission is incredibly rigorous. And so even when we see sort of indicators that say partially met, or almost met, things like that, it doesn't mean that the schools aren't performing well. And so to put that in context, we also included comparison data between the two virtual charter schools of Maine with a national cohort. And you can see in those tables that the virtual charter schools in Maine are actually exceeding performance compared to a national comparative group, which is something to be incredibly proud of. And one last point that I'll mention on the performance question is that when we submitted the annual report to the commissioner, we didn't fail to fully articulate the fact that the two virtual charter schools were the only schools in the state of Maine that administered assessments last year. Most schools didn't administer any assessment at the end of the year. And I don't think it's fair to the virtual charter schools to assume that last year's spring data is an accurate portrayal of what their students are capable of, given every school was shut down. Just because our virtual charter schools are virtual schools doesn't mean those students and families weren't impacted by the stress of job loss, family loss, and school closure during the spring of 2020. So that's something else to keep in mind when considering the data that was in the annual report for last year's performance.
Thank you, Mr. Jeremy. Mr. Jeremy Jones. So my final point is to Representative Millet's motion. I'd like to add a friendly amendment to allow for outside funding from like a nonprofit, similar to what we did with LD 127 for the computer science.
So Representative Sampson, you're asking Representative Millet if she's willing to accept the amendment to allow for outside funding.
Yes. So it's similar to what we did with this study for the computer science. If we're going to do a study, we need to have funding for this. And we all know that if we're going to just rely on the general fund and appropriations without a specific funding stream, this dies on the table. So I am requesting that we have an outside funding source that we can add to this.
May I respond, Representative?
Representative Millet.
Yeah, thank you. So this actually doesn't go to the appropriations table. This goes to the studies table, which is dealt with by the Legislative Council. And I actually would prefer not to allow, I just think given how this is one of the few areas in the Education Committee that can get a little politically charged, that we keep the funding neutral. That'd be my preference.
May I respond, sir? Representative Brennan?
Yes.
Okay, so I guess my question would be the neutral funding. I'm all for neutral funding, but what would be your suggestion? That's why I'm saying a nonprofit funding source. That's pretty neutral, I would think.
The Legislative Council has a budget for studies, so it's just up to us to make sure it gets on the table and considered. That actually doesn't get axed by AFA, which is a nice change.
Okay, thanks for that clarification.
So next we had Senator Woodson and we're at about 1:45 and we have to be at AFA at 1. So we'll take the question from Senator Woodson and hopefully be able to move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What is the history of the reaction of the Legislative Council when there is no funding? It just seems like to me,
Yeah.
if there's funding available, it's going to have a better chance of being approved.
The Legislative Council has a budget for studies. There is funding available.
She knows the D's.
So Senator Woodson, did you want to follow up to that?
No, thank you. I'm just not familiar with the history of how they react to that.
Okay. So at this point, I do not see any other hands raised. Okay. And there has been a motion by Representative Millette that has been seconded by Representative Dodge. Are we ready to proceed taking action on the motion? Okay, and I'm just going to ask our legislative, Sam, you understand what the motion is and all the additions in terms of people that would be appointed?
I do, yes. And if it's okay with the committee, I would run it by Representative Millette just to make sure I got them all before I bring it back for language review.
Okay, great. All right, so I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of the motion, which is ought to pass on LD 389 as amended. All those in favor? I see Representative Millette, Representative McCray, Representative Dodge, Representative Crockett, Representative Salisbury, and Representative Brennan. And all right, and all those opposed? I see Representative Roach, Representative Sampson, Representative Lyman, Representative Woodson. Okay. So Sam, did you, or Sam Baker, what's the actual count?
The count, Representative, is 6 in favor and 4 opposed.
Okay, so the motion does pass, and we would be looking to Representative Stearns and Senator Rafferty and Senator Daughtry to vote at some point in the immediate future. Right, okay. Thank you very much for your work, Representative Millette.
I'm sorry, what's the minority motion?
I'm sorry. Is the minority report just ought not to pass or?
Ought not to pass.
Okay. Thank you, Representative Millette. So the minority report is ought not to pass. So we still have LD 430 on the table. Sam, could you, Sam Baker, could you contact AFA and see if they're planning start right at 1 o'clock and if we're first up for the discussion?
Yes, Representative, I'll reach out to them right now.
Okay. So we do have LD 430 and what I will do is close the work session on LD 389 and I will open the work session on LD 430 and I will turn to our legislative analyst to provide a summary.
Share the screen here. I'll try to go fast. So this is LD 430, an act to provide for school choice and online learning opportunities in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. So this bill overlaps somewhat with the last bill. It does 3 things. It removes the 1,000-person limit on virtual charter school enrollment, so it just removes it entirely. It removes the 10-school limit on the number of charter schools that may operate at any given time. And it removes the prohibition on the expansion of a virtual public charter school to serve a grade level not included in the original contract or for a school whose charter was renewed, the renewed contract. testimony was heard for, against, and neither for nor against. This is all just reference information for the committee. It sends you to the bill analysis for LD 380, links to current statutes, a listing of the current charter schools, a link to monitoring reports for the charter schools, the commission rules, including detailing the process for authorization of schools and for school renewals, and a chart of state laws applicable to charter schools. Fiscal impact not yet determined, and I will stop sharing so y'all can see each other.
All right, are there questions of Mr. Sampson? Any questions regarding the bill? Okay, seeing none. Is there a motion at this point? Representative Millette?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Given that these two bills are very similar and we have just voted to pass out a resolve to study this issue, I would move ought not to pass.
I would second, please, Mr. Chair.
Yep, it's been moved and seconded, ought not to pass on LD 430. And Representative Sampson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to have a quick corner caucus. I'd like to also reconsider our last action on the last bill.
Well, okay, you asked two questions. I think you voted in minority, which means that you can't ask for reconsideration. You can only ask for reconsideration if you voted in the majority. So you'd have to have somebody in the majority move to reconsider. Secondly, you can certainly have a corner caucus. I would just say that we're kind of, Sam, what did you find out from AFA?
Representative, AFA is getting back to me. They're already in the clerk was already in the committee room. So somebody else that was in the office is running over there now to see what they can find out. And then they're going to call me right back.
Okay. So Representative Sampson, how long do you think your corner caucus might be?
5 minutes, not even 2 minutes.
Okay, why don't you go ahead and have the corner caucus? We'll come back. And if we need to, if it's 1 o'clock, we have to go to AFA, we might have to table the bill and take it up at a later point if we have to go over to financial affairs. Okay.
Well, do you want to just go ahead and do that? Because look at what the time is.
Well, if AFA comes back and said they're going to be starting 15 or 20 minutes late, or they're a half hour late.
Okay, fair enough. All right, I'll do that right now.
All right. So we will convene back here in, I guess, in 5 minutes. So that would be right at 1 o'clock. And if we need to, we can move right over to AFA. Okay. And Sam, as soon as you hear anything, please call me, text me, come to Portland and find me.
All right, sounds good, Representative.
Mr. Chair, will we be corner caucusing, please? This is Jan. Will the Ds be corner caucusing, please, or no? I can't hear you because you are on mute, I believe.
Yes. It wasn't my intent to corner caucus. We are pretty clear about what, there's a motion now, and then we have the report to AFA, so we should be okay.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Yep.
I'm sorry I keep calling you madam.
So Sam, what's the word?
No response by phone or email yet. So,
Are they there?
oh, you know what? Yeah, let me go check it out.
Sam?
Representative, I was communicating with Hillary. They do know, AFA does know that we're still in work session. I think they're waiting, but they do
Well,
know.
if they're waiting, we should go over to them right now then.
Let me
Okay,
just check
yeah, we
this
should,
out.
okay. So let's come back and let's entertain a motion to table LD 430.
I would make a motion that we table LD 430, please.
Okay, and is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Representative McCray. All those in favor of tabling LD 430? Great. Thank you. And we will now proceed right over to the Appropriations Committee.
And just a reminder that that's a different Zoom link. And I did send it out around like 12:15 p.m. if you're searching your email inbox. But if you're having any trouble finding it, just my direct line here at the State House is 3125 if you need to give me a call.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.